This is Dr. Manjunath Chennapgot from Anveshan Academy, Bangalore, India. Dear students, in previous videos, we discussed about what is thermodynamics, what are the application of thermodynamics, and what are the scope of thermodynamics, what is macroscopic approach of thermodynamics, what is microscopic approach of thermodynamics. With examples, we discussed in detail. Dear students, today I will move towards new topic, that is thermodynamic system, boundary and surrounding. Okay, now I will move towards the first concept, that is thermodynamic system. What is thermodynamic system? Thermodynamic system in which a finite quantity or a quantity of matter or a region of a space or a prescribed region of a space chosen for study is known to be thermodynamic system. What is thermodynamic system? In simple terms, thermodynamic system is a system in which certain quantity of matter or a region is considered for study. That is known to be thermodynamic system. So what is thermodynamic system? You can see here, dear students, here is a system. Okay, certain quantity of matter, you can see here now, certain quantity of matter which is considered for study, or a region, a small region you can call, or a region is considered for a study, is known to be thermodynamic system. How it is, that you can see here now. Assume that this is a board. Okay, this is a writing board, you can see here now. Assume that it is having a length of 2 meter and height of 1 meter, example. Okay, so what I will do, I want to check the properties of the board. Say, what is the density of this board, what is the weight. Okay, so like that I want to check. What I will do, I will not take whole board for analysis or study. In that, what I will do, I will take a small region in a whole space. This we can call it as a whole space. The board is nothing but what? It is having a whole space. But in that, what I will do, I will take a small region for study. Whatever the small region you are taking for study is nothing but what? System. So what it contains? It consists of certain quantity of matter or a small region for study, and it is surrounded. How you differentiate it? By putting in a boundary here now. By putting in a boundary, you made it as a small region. The small region which is having certain quantity of matter in a space is nothing but system. Okay, so hope you understood what is system. System is a region or a certain quantity of matter which is considered for the study, is known to be system, and it is surrounded by a layer. Dear students, you can see here now, and it is surrounded by a layer. That layer we can call it as a boundary. If there is no boundary, it is very difficult for me to study. Okay, fine. So system is nothing but certain quantity of matter or region which is considered for study is nothing but what? System, and it is surrounded by a layer. That layer or envelope or enclosure, we will call it as a boundary. Okay, fine. What is boundary and what are the types of boundary, I will discuss in detail. So now we know what is system. This system is classified into 3 types. One is closed system, open system, and isolated system. Okay, fine. Now I will move towards next topic, that is boundary. Okay, so what is boundary? Boundary is, it is a real or imaginary or the actual or the hypothetical envelope or a layer which separates the system from its surrounding. I repeat, real, it is a real or imaginary or actual or hypothetical envelope that separates the system from surrounding is nothing but boundary. So in simple terms, it is nothing but it is a real, boundary is a real or imaginary surface which separate the system and surrounding is called boundary. So what is that? You can see here now, dear students. What I have done? This boundary separates this is what? Surrounding. You can see here now. Anything external to the system is surrounding. What is surrounding? I will tell you. Okay, this is surrounding and this is system. This surrounding a system is separated by a layer. That layer we can call it as a boundary. That boundary may be real or it may be imaginary. The layer or enclosure or envelope or a surface which separates the system from the surrounding is known to be boundary. Okay, when it comes to boundary, it is having 2 main types. One is real boundary, another one is imaginary boundary. Okay, so what is surrounding? You can see here now. Anything external to the system is nothing but surrounding. Okay, so what is surrounding? The mass or a region or physical space or anything outside the system is surrounding. So what I can say now? So then I will take certain quantity of matter is considered for study is system. Okay, sorry, I will write it once again. Just a minute. Okay, fine. Okay, so I will draw it big. Okay, so it is content, there is, assume that there is a certain quantity of matter or a small region you have considered. Okay, so it is what? System. Okay, it is what? System. Okay, certain quantity of matter region which is considered for this study is system, and anything external to the system or anything outside the system is surrounding. Okay, anything external to the system is surrounding. Okay, and the system is separated by surrounding a layer, by a layer. The system is separated by surrounding a layer. That layer you can call it as a boundary or system boundary. Okay, okay, boundary or system boundary. Okay, so now here, dear students, you can see now. Okay, fine. The system is classified into three types. One is closed system, one is closed system, another one is open system, the third one is isolated system. When it comes to boundary, it is having two important types. One is real boundary, the next is imaginary boundary. Okay, this is about thermodynamic system, boundary and surrounding. Okay, now I will move towards next topic. That is, the next topic means that is thermodynamic system only, where this thermodynamic system and surrounding play a very important role that you can see here. By considering some live examples, I will try to understand you. What is thermodynamic system? Thermodynamic system is nothing but what? It consists of certain quantity of matter or a region or a physical space for the study. Okay, what is that? You can take finite quantity. That means what, dear students? You can see now, when it comes to system, right? Assume that there is a 1000 liter of water tank. Assume that 1 liter of water tank. If I want to check the properties of this, now you can see now whether can I call it as a system or not. Yes, this also you can call it a system when it comes to 1000 liters. But for study it is difficult. For that, what I will do? I will take 1 liter of water in a container, then 1 liter of container, it is having certain quantity of matter. Okay, certain quantity of matter, and it's surrounded by a layer. That layer we can call it as a boundary. Then when it comes to water, it acts as a matter, that is nothing but what? Matter, and it is surrounded by a layer, that is container, that is known to be boundary. Certain quantity of matter or fine quantity of matter which is considered for study is nothing but what? Thermodynamic system. I can take a matter, or else I can take specific region of a space. Okay, as I told, in whole board I can take only small space for a study. Sorry, small region in a space, that is known to be system. Or else you can take a prescribed area. In whole area you will not take complete area, you will take small area for study, that is known to be system. Fine. So when it comes to thermodynamic system, as I told, it is having a boundary. Without boundary we can't say it is a system. Okay, system must have a boundary. When it comes to boundary, as I told, there are two types, real and imaginary boundary. Okay, so the system is having three important types, that is closed, open and isolated system. Then why this thermodynamic system is required? The purpose is to analyze the energy interaction. So as I told, dear students, in the definition of thermodynamics, thermodynamics is nothing but what? It's a branch of science. Thermodynamics is a branch of science which deals with the energy interaction and its effect on the state of the system and physical properties of the substance is known to be thermodynamics. We have already explained you. When you are going to supply certain amount of heat, that heat is represented by Q, right? The state of the state of the system is going to change. Because of the change in the state of the system, we are going to get the work. That means what? Due to interaction of work, due to interaction of heat, we are going to get some work. and there will be change in the state of the system and other physical properties of the substance. Okay, so to analyze the heat interaction with the system, then thermodynamic system play a very important role. If there is no thermodynamic system, it's very difficult for us to analyze the energy interaction. Okay, that is known to be thermodynamic system. So as I told, for example, thermodynamic, certain quantity I told, right, certain quantity I was telling you, or a specific reason I was telling you, or a small area which is considered for study is thermodynamic system. So for one example I will take it, mass. Okay, so when it comes to a blood donation, right, blood checkup, right, what you will do, you will give only sample or 2 ml or 5 ml or 6 ml blood you are going to give. That means what, small quantity of matter, that is blood you have considered for testing. What are the tests? Blood test, whatever you are doing, right, what you done, you have taken small quantity of blood, that is a small quantity of matter is considered for a study. That is known to be thermodynamic system. Okay, so while discussing thermodynamic system, I told you, right, boundary. So when it comes to boundary, as I told, there is real boundary and imaginary boundary. Real boundary means what, you can take a water bottle, that water bottle consists of a water in it, right? Okay, water in it, whatever the water is there, right? Okay, so whatever the water is there in the water bottle, right, that is nothing but real boundary. We can see that water is surrounded by a layer, then it is physical appearance is there. If it is there, if it is the boundary, that boundary we can call it as a real boundary. That boundary we can call it as a real boundary. That means what, assume that this is a container, right? When the container is consist of water, you can take a water bottle. That means what, this act as a wall, this act as a wall, this act as the wall. That means what, it is a boundary, it becomes a boundary. We can see here now, physically we can see, that boundary we can call it as a real boundary. That means what, 100% boundary is there, that we can call it as a real boundary. Okay, so what is imaginary boundary, that you can see here, dear students. I will take in a water into a container. You can take a water into the container. I will heat the water over a period of time. When it reaches the saturation temperature, that is 100 degrees Celsius, slowly what will happens, the water will be converted into steam. Okay, water will be converted into steam. When the steam is coming out of the system, right, you can see now, again it looks like this, but this steam, whenever it is coming out and entering into the surrounding, we can't, it is having a boundary, but we can imagine, but we can't see. Then if it's so, then that boundary we can call it as a imaginary boundary. That's steam, whatever it is there, right, again I can call it as a bound system. It is having a certain quantity of matter, again matter is steam here. Now that steam is surrounded by a layer or enclosure or envelope, but we can imagine, but we can't touch it, or there is no physical presence of that boundary, but we can imagine that boundary. We can call it as a imaginary boundary, dear students. This is one example. One more examples you can take. There is a pipe, or you can call it as a conduit. When the fluid is moving, right, when the fluid is moving in this direction, I want to study the properties of this fluid. What I will do, I will take a small fluid element here. Now I will take a small fluid element. When I'm taking a small fluid element, it is surrounded by a layer, but we can't see it, but we can imagine that boundary. That boundary we can call it as a imaginary boundary in a fluid flow. That's also one example, you can take it for imaginary boundary. So here you can see one engineering application I will take, and I will try to explain you what is fixed boundary, or what is real boundary. I will take in a container. Okay, so container means cylinder, piston and cylinder arrangement. Inside the cylinder I fill the gas. Okay, so that gas is surrounded by a layer. That layer I can call it as a real boundary. That means what, the walls are fixed 100%. You can tell that, you can see that this is gas is surrounded by a layer, that is real boundary. Okay, in piston and cylinder arrangement. So this is what real boundary. Then what are the other examples for real boundary, that I will show with some examples. In quick recall, what is closed system, that we will discuss. okay, in upcoming classes. What is isolated system? That also I'm going to discuss in upcoming classes. Okay, just I'm showing you here. What is imaginary boundary? That I already discussed. Okay, what is real boundary? That I already discussed. What is open system? There is an application. What is open system in detail with applications? I will try to explain you in the next slides. Okay, then we discussed what is surrounding. As I told, if you are assuming this as a system, anything external or anything outside the system is surrounding, then we can call it as a surrounding. Okay, surrounding is anything external to the system is surrounding. Okay, fine. Now we understood what is a system and types of system boundary we discussed here. So I will try to understand, I will try to explain system. You can take anything in a container. You can take a water, you can take in a grains or something else, whatever you can take. That water, whatever the matter is there, right? And it is surrounded by a boundary. Then we call it as a system. Fine. So as I told, when it comes to system, there are two cases. Energy, that we can call it as a heat energy. Heat energy may enter into the system or it may come out of the system. If it is enter into the system, that process we can call it as a endothermic process, or heat energy flows into the system. That is known to be endothermic system, endothermic process. If the heat is coming out of the system and it is moving into the surrounding, is known to be exothermic process. In simple terms, if heat enters into the system is endothermic, if exit from the system is exothermic process. Okay, this play a very important role, because when it comes to open and closed system, with respect to system boundary, we are using one word, that is crosses. That crosses means heat may enter into the system or it may exit from the system. If heat enter into the system, that is endothermic process. If heat is exiting from the system, is exothermic process. Okay, so now, as I told you, dear students, you can take one more examples here. Now this is a piston and cylinder arrangement. The gas is filled inside it, so you have applied certain amount of weight on it. Okay, so that gas is surrounded by a layer. That layer we can call it as a system boundary. That system boundary, we can say it is 100% it is there. If it's so, then we can call it as a real boundary. So to understand better, okay, so I have drawn one diagram here. So certain quantity of matter is system, anything external to the system is surrounding, and it is separated, surrounding system is separated by surrounding by a layer you can call it as a boundary. Okay, as I told, this boundary is two types, real and imaginary. So assume that, dear students, we can take the engineering application itself, that is piston and cylinder arrangement. Okay, so hot gas is there inside. Assume that both the valves are closed. We see valves are closed. Certain quantity of gas, you can take it, gas into the system. Okay, gas into the cylinder, then it becomes a system. When it is a gas is there, right? Confound boundary is there. If there is a confound boundary, or the cylinder act as a wall, that 100% it is there. So that boundary we can call it as a real boundary. The system, that gas is surrounded by a layer. That layer we can call it as a real boundary. Assume that whatever the hot gas is there inside the cylinder, right? I will leave it out. When the hot gas will come out and it is going to merge with the atmosphere, when it is going to merge, right? So but we can't see this hot gas or exhaust gas, but we can imagine there is a boundary. That means this hot gas is separated by atmospheric air by a layer. That layer we can call it as a imaginary boundary. So real boundary means fixed boundary, there is a definite boundary is there. When it comes to real imaginary boundary, there will be a boundary, but that we are going to imagine that imaginary boundary, we can call it that image the layer which is imagined, that we can call it as a imaginary boundary. Fine. To understand better what is real boundary and imaginary boundary, I have taken some live examples that you can see here, dear students. What is real boundary? It is nothing but what? Container walls act as a real boundary. And what is the main important character? It is physical presence is there. But when it comes to imaginary boundary examples, you can take it theoretical analysis. And what are the important characteristics of this imaginary boundary? That is no physical presence, but we can imagine, but there is no physical presence. That is known to be imaginary boundary. So what are the examples for imaginary boundary? You can take it here now. Whatever the emissions which is coming from the engine, right? Whatever the emission which is coming from the engine, it is entering into the surrounding, but it is separated by a layer, but that layer we can't see, or there it is not, it may not be physically present, but we can imagine that boundary. We can call it as a imaginary boundary. Okay, so one more example you can take it. As I told, whenever the steam is coming out and it entering into the system, entering into the surrounding, right, then that steam is separated by a layer. That layer we can imagine, but we can't see it. That boundary we can call it as a imaginary boundary. One example you can take, dear students, you can take in your home, right? During puja, what you will do, you will going to use the incense sticks, right? Then the flame is coming, right? That fumes or perfume is coming, right? That means what? That is separated by surrounding, but it is having a layer or envelope or enclose, but we can't see it, but we can imagine. If you are imagining imagining a envelope or enclosure, that enclosure we can call it as a imaginary boundary. You can take, these students, you can take whenever you will do use some people, they are using cigarette, right? Cigar or something else there, that smoke is coming out, right? That smoke is separated by atmospheric air. We can imagine there is a smoke is there and it is surrounded by a layer. We can imagine that layer, we can call it as a imaginary boundary. Okay, fine. So now you can take one, okay, teapot here now, or you can flask, you can see. Okay, when tea is filled into it, right, then it is surrounded by fixed walls. That fixed walls are nothing but what? Real boundary. Whenever you will pour the tea into the cup, right, when you are pouring tea into the cup, then from the cup what will happen? Steam is coming out. If the steam is coming out and it is going to enter into the surrounding, but that steam having a layer, but that layer we can imagine, that layer you can call it as a imaginary boundary. One example you can take, one more example, whenever it comes to industry, right, that industry from chimney we are going to get a emissions, exhaust emissions or pollutions, we can say. That pollution again, it is surrounded by a layer, but again we can imagine, but we can't see. That layer we can call it as a imaginary boundary. But whenever this that emissions, they're going out of the chimney, right, but again going through what? Walls only. When the wall comes, right, definitely there is a layer. That layer we can call it as a real boundary, dear students. Okay, this is about what is real boundary and imagine boundary. I have discussed with more and more examples for your better understanding, dear students. Okay, so here with I request you, please subscribe my channel, like and do comment and press the bell button and support me to do more and more videos like this. I hope you understood well. Thank you. We will continue next class. Thank you one and all.